Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the Diary of a Lawyer. And the discussion is on the reported return of artifacts from the Manchester Museum to the indigenous Australian islanders. I think around 174 objects have been reportedly returned to the islanders. Now, this comes in the backdrop of the British Museum, where reportedly thousands of uh, pieces, artifacts were stolen by alleged, employees or employee, and has subsequently led to resignation of senior officials in the British Museum. Now, there is a law that prohibits returning, that safeguards, that governs the British Museum and how it's going to be governed, and also the return of those artifacts. And I think a week or so ago, the all parliamentary chair of the group on reparations, Bell Rivero, who is a British MP in the London Borough of Lambeth, called on the law to be scrapped. But there were also wider calls from across society, with academics, specialists from all backgrounds, that the excuse or the reason that was given, has been traditionally given by the British Museum for not returning these artifacts, is apparently because they're safe there. And some of the artifacts are the bronze, the Benin bronze, and the Greek Parthenon, and other pieces taken from across the world, and in most cases during colonial times or conquest invasions, where there was banning, looting, and killings of, in reported cases, of the people who, in the process of obtaining that. And so the argument, as in terms of safekeeping, is surely blown out of the water. And secondly, the notion that somehow one takes someone's property and then say, well, you can't have it back because it's safe with me, is head spinning and difficult to understand. But I think events seem to be moving forward quickly, and other museums are voluntarily returning and making connections and building relationships with the previous owners of the artifacts. And so the Manchester Museum has handed back 174 objects to the indigenous Australian islanders, at least according to reports by the Guardian newspaper in the UK. Now, the return of the items to the Anindiliakwa community was held as a landmark example of cultural repatriation. The UK Museum, Manchester Museum, return of objects is significant, as I mentioned, because repatriation is what is being held as the right thing to do, and because such projects normally revolve around sacred or ceremonial items or cultural value for those communities, and the objects were considered stolen or taken in shocking circumstances, to say the very least, some of which I have described. And in this case, Manchester is returning everyday objects with a more mundane backstory, and they include dolls made up from shells, baskets, fishing spears, boomerangs, armbands, etc., etc. And the expectation is that the objects will be used to strengthen and revitalize the Anindiliakwa culture, to help teach generations the cultural history of their people. According to the director of the museum, they say they believe this is the future of museums, Esma Ward, and this is how it should be. She wanted to emphasize that she was not telling other museums what they should do with their collection. Maybe she should. But if people are inspired by their commitment to build relations, that would be great, as she's quoted as saying. And other organizations, including UNESCO, hope that the project will be a model for other museums to follow. The UNESCO Director of Culture and Emergencies, Krista Pickett, was in Manchester on Tuesday for the formal handing over of the objects. He says it's a truly historic. She says it's a truly historic and moving moment, and it's a case where we have shared with member states because they felt that it was exemplary in many ways, and the return of the objects was not a transaction but a collaboration, a dialogue, a project fueled by empathy, trust, and love. Adding that it's so much more than repatriation. And she remembers how moved she was when she had a presentation. This is not a loss, it's not giving away something. And a brief background about the objects were apparently, let's just say, bought or traded or whatever, how they got it in the 1950s by an individual called Peter Worsley, who was apparently researching the lives of the indigenous Australians. And his daughter, who was at the ceremony, said he would be thrilled and so proud today. And islanders have also been directly involved in deciding what should be returned and what should stay in Manchester, apparently, according to reports. The museum says that this made the return feel momentous in a different way to other objects returned, she said, because they had sit with the elders and hearing them discuss this collection of their land in their terms had enabled them to understand and care in ways not possible in a storeroom in Manchester. The also other observations from young people present, saying that the people who traded or sold the objects in the 50s did not fully understand the transaction and thought the objects were being borrowed. And she said she's emotional and happy and proud of the people. But they expressed hope that other museums would follow Manchester's example. One of the landers, Matthew Mamarika, who is an emerging leader, also is quoted as saying that they're happy that the objects are going back to their homeland where they belong, so young people can follow in the footsteps of their ancestors. And thanks for keeping them safe. So there we are. I think at the British Museum the pressure will be mounting because the reasons they've been giving have been debunked by their own actions and actions since thousands of artifacts have reportedly been stolen, apparently, allegedly, by even on account of their own members of staff. So we shall be watching developments. That's a good step from the museum in Manchester, and we shall be watching developments. Thank you for listening. I'll speak again. Thank you. Bye.